Welcome back to Solomon's Porch with your host, Jason.
And Shawn.
And we are joined with a good friend of, now he's a good friend of the show. He's been on 2 segments so far. And good friend of mine, at least, DJ Jeremaya from Trackstars. How you doing, sir?
Good, man. How are you guys?
It's great to have you on, man. Great to have you on. So we're
Yeah,
going to be
good to have
talking
you, bro.
about kind of I'd say it's somewhat of an important topic. I think it's something that a lot of people might struggle with. And so the idea here is Shawn and I were having a discussion earlier today, actually. And but I'll just bring up the Q&A portion from another YouTuber that I love to listen to. He's a pastor, and he got this question one day, and it was a gentleman trying to figure out, how do you figure out your calling in life? Whether it's a Christian, your Christian calling, your life calling, ministry calling, whatever it is, like, how do you find that? And, he was saying there is no clear-cut cookie cutter answer. Like, there is no formula where you just plug in all the things about you into the formula and find the answer. It doesn't really work like that. God uses different methods and means to show us what our calling in life is, which is important in and of itself. He said, but we all have the calling to live a life of godly character. He said that's one thing that we all have, and we usually tend to overlook that while we're searching for our other calling. And I think it's important because we all have kind of these godly characteristics that are spelled out in Scripture, whether it's through Jesus, through Paul, through James, even in the Old Testament, through the Proverbs, through King David and the Psalms. And so I kind of wanted us to discuss kind of any personal situations or issues or things that kind of where we felt like we've been waiting to see where God's calling us to, and what has kind of been our struggle in that kind of that waiting, that preparation stage. DJ, you got anything on your chest or on your plate you want to start off with, or Shawn?
Well, you and I were having a conversation to this effect earlier today. Um, I'll go ahead and be vulnerable and share. If you've been listening to the show, you know that I've gone through a lot of health issues, struggled with that. I had a hard time with dealing with some church hurt, and then so subsequently trying to figure out what it is that I'm supposed to be doing with my life. It's like, yeah, okay, I can work a job, whatever, and I got this job, that job. But I've always felt like that there was always a larger calling, some way of serving the body of Christ other than, I will say, in a more expanded way than what everyone is called to do. So I have been frequently praying about, okay, God, so what is it that you have for me? What's next? Where am I going? That sort of thing. And to say, okay, well, what are your talents? What are your skills? I'm more that jack of all trades kind of thing, master of none. And so I fit in a lot of different areas. There's a lot of stuff that I can do. And that's not being boastful as much as it is to say that that's part of the dilemma, is saying, okay, well, hey, look, I'm a guitarist and that's what I do. So I'm going to be in a praise band somewhere. Well, that's awesome. And that's great that you have that gift. But yeah, I play some bass guitar. So I could be doing that, or I could be doing tech, or I could be doing, any number of other things. So anyway, but I've also felt like that this was an element, even in terms of when you're talking about finances, is that how can God put you where you're supposed to be next until you have done what you're supposed to do where you are right now? So how does God bless you with more finances if you're still struggling to manage the finances that he's blessed you with at this point in time? If you can't get that straight, he's not going to give you more. So similarly, in my life, I know that some of my fruit, um, there's this orange that my daughter loves. This orange, it is knobby looking. I don't even remember what it's called anymore because I've nicknamed it the ugly. You guys have seen the little cuties, right, at the grocery store, and they're cute, right? This thing is giant knobby ugly thing, right? And I call it the ugly. Well, unfortunately, that's exactly what some of my fruit looks like. It's ugly. And so, why would God put me into a ministry calling when I've got ugly fruit? It doesn't make any sense. So, if the words that I say, if the attitudes that I have don't reflect Christ already, why does he need me in something else into that next level? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. And even if you were to just look at it from an employer's perspective, okay, I've got this worker and they're doing a good job and everything, but they got this thing that instead of taking only 15 minutes for a break, he's taking 20 minutes every single time, and it seems to be getting a little bit longer. That's not someone you promote. You promote the person that says that, I have 15 minutes, but you know what? I'm good. I'm going to go ahead and get this work done, and I'm going to do the work above and beyond. If my fruit doesn't look like what it should be representing Christ, then I can't expect him to answer with that call and tell me what that next step is. And I think that's one of those things that we lack a lot of times, is that maybe we have that relationship with Christ, and maybe we've done other things, and maybe some of that fruit has looked a lot better in the past than what it does now. And we've just kind of said, we'll fix that later. Or, I can keep that at home separate from what I do in my work or in my ministry calling. But what God wants is he wants that pure heart. He wants that true devotion to him. And understandably and rightfully so. If he's going to call you into youth ministry, don't you think you kind of need to stop cussing? Just saying, right?
Yeah. DJ, you got anything kind of piggyback off of that, sir?
That's hard to follow, Shawn. Man, I was about to say something, and Shawn just like proposing it.
Sorry, bro.
I'll say this. No, it's good. I mean, that's just being an honest statement. I understand the church. I understand that quite well. Like, honestly, it's just one of those things. Like, serving in ministry could be something when you leave a church that kind of used you like a rag, basically, just rinsed out all your gifts and left you out there to dry. And then when it's time to find somewhere else to be, it's kind of hard. And I understand that completely. I totally understand that. Or kind of like not trusting your new church. Let's say you're in your new church and your new church is amazing, but you're like, I want to hold my gifts. I don't want to use my gifts at this church because I don't want to feel like I felt at that same church I just came out of. You know what I mean? Right. So I understand what you're saying. That's very real. I think your calling is something that's deep inside you that God put inside you to answer, to help out mankind and know who Jesus is, in my personal opinion. And what that means is like, if I'm called to, like, I'm like you, Shawn, honestly, I'm a jack of all trades. I have so many gifts and talents. I write scripts. We're actually, me and my wife is working on a script coming out soon, like a short film. I have a board game I'm working on. I could do music too. You know what I mean? I could rap. I could DJ, do a DJ album. I have ideas for comic books. You know what I mean? So God has gifted me enough to, I don't know what lane to go in. You know what I mean? And sometimes it's one of those things where it's like, it's frustrating, but at the same time, I know the main purpose is like, God's put me on this earth to like impact the entertainment industry in some type of way. You know what I mean? For his glory and not for my glory, because like I said, I get stuff like every day. I get an idea for a script every day. I get an idea for some type of movie, I get an idea every day and it's hard. You know what I'm saying? It's hard to like, how do I use this? What I use this for, or whatever. You know what I mean? And the problem with people like us at times is we get lazy and procrastinate and don't use those gifts, and they just kind of fade to the wayside. But that's just kind of getting off track a little bit. But I would say about purpose, figuring out what you're doing in the meantime. It's just an interesting thing. I think honestly, you could use your gifts at church, but you could use your gifts in the community too. So let's prime example. Let's say you have a gift of one of your gifts is to help people. You want to help people. You see people in need. You see people that have wants. You just want to help people. Well, they may have something at your church where you can like be a usher or a care ministry, right? But like in your community, you could be something where if you're in your community, if y'all need, they need a food bank in your community, you like, well, I'm gonna help start this food bank, or I'm gonna help start this food drive, or I'm gonna help with kids, or I'm gonna help with whatever. Like if you see the need in your community and you know the need, and your church may not be doing it, and you serve in church, but in your community it's something totally different than what you're doing in church, then the overall message is you feel need in your community to help people because you have that gift of hospitality, I guess, right? So I'm saying I think people to figure out your purpose, I'll say this, if you know your purpose, but it's not coming to fruition, I would say don't give up on it. Like keep working on it, keep doing it, keep trying to cultivate it, even in your wait time, because I feel like God has people on wait moments, on wait moments, meaning like Joseph, using Joseph's story as an example. It's like Joseph knew he was supposed to lead his brothers, but he thought it was right at that moment, but God was like, it's going to be a minute before you do that. You know what I'm saying? But in that wait moment, his gifts was getting cultivated. He's using his gifts. He's turning down sin. He's doing all the right stuff, even when stuff is getting worse for him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He still know who he's called to do. He know he's still going to be some type of leadership, but at the same time, he's still trying to like figure it out. You know what I'm saying? Or figure out what God is doing. But in that meantime, he's still doing something. And I think that's what people got to understand. It's like, even if God is telling you no right now, you got to still do what you do. You know what I'm saying? So if you do some type of music, or let's say you're a pastor, or not pastor, but you want to preach, and they're not letting you at your church preach on main stage, maybe you need to preach to the youth. Maybe you need to help with the children. Maybe you need to like go to a prison ministry. Like, you know what I'm saying? Do something to cultivate your gift. So when God says it's time, then it's time for you to get to where you think like as a pastor or whatever. You know what I mean? But I just feel like your purpose is there. I know at times I've heard over the years, and is a song by The Truth, the rapper The Truth. He has on his open book album where he breaks down how do you figure out what you called to do and your purpose and all this other stuff. And it's like, what do you love to do? Like, if you couldn't get paid for it, what would you do? Would you do it still? Like, would you still do Solomon's Porch if you guys wasn't like getting paid or whatever, or if it was, would you still do what you have a compassion? You know what I'm saying? So I think that's one of those things to figure out. But I just do think in the wait time, it is hard though, honestly, because you get frustrated very easily in the wait time, and you get you start to question your calling in the wait time. You know what I'm saying? Because you feel like God isn't moving on the time that you want him to move, Right. So I would say for anybody out there that's in that predicament, just pray and ask God, like, one, why am I waiting? What are you showing me out of this situation that you want me to wait for? Like, what is it? Like using Joseph again, Joseph was prideful. Like Joseph was cocky. God had to wrench him out of that cockiness and that pridefulness so that when he became a leader, like it wasn't like when he seen his brothers again, it wasn't like, I told you, now bow before me. You know what I mean? It was, I love y'all. I missed y'all. I want to see my brother. I want to see my father. You know what I'm saying? And
Right.
I think that's at times where we have to deal with. You know what I mean? So I think everybody, like out of all three of us, have something that we have to deal with before God takes us to levels and levels and levels, what we call levels, but like spiritual promotions, I guess what it is. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I mean, I don't know what else to say to anybody else that's trying to figure that out in your waiting time. But I think that's something where you need to pray about and actually get strong accountability about as well. Like talk to people about that, because one of those things about frustration is at times, sometimes that could lead to like a depression, or that sometimes could lead to like God not loving me, or God like not caring for me, but just really speaking to people about that, you know what I mean? And really talking to people that's going to keep you accountable or keep you prayed up about that, because it's just, it's heavy right now. And it's a lot dealing right now, even in this pandemic. It's like, God, somebody's job that was their purpose may have been taken away from them because of the pandemic. And it's like, what am I now? Who am I now?
Yeah.
What's my identity is in all this stuff now. And it's really a prayer and like talking to people about those things, people that you trust, that are mature in the faith, and people that like really will help you out with this stuff. So that's pretty
Yeah.
much what I would say.
Yeah, I think the waiting room can be tough. And one of the things, like like for me example, and I don't know how much of it I've shared on the show, but like setting up my job now that I don't feel like is where I utilize the best of whatever gifting God has given me. So I feel like, well, I can't utilize that gift, so my time here is wasted. Um, and then you know I get frustrated. I kind of am not necessarily disrespectful toward anything in my job related, but like I'm not happy, I'm not content, I'm not satisfied in God at my job necessarily. I'm more frustrated that I'm still at my job and that I'm not doing what I feel like God's called me to do. And so even though like periodically I'd have situations where I could fulfill that purpose, um, even working that job. And so, it gets to a point where then you got to ask, okay, what is my life calling? And we have to understand that your job cannot fire you from your life's calling.
Facts.
And that's the thing. And I can't remember who I heard say it, but one of the things that really impacted me on a personal level is like whatever God's called you to do, like no job, like you might get paid to do that at a job, but if that job fires you, they can't keep you from doing that calling. Otherwise, it's not a calling; it's a job,
Yeah. Facts.
and that's difficult. And a lot of times we think, oh, it needs to be my job in order for me to do the calling. And so, the things that I ended up, there was a lot of things I ventured out into doing. And so, like we started a Bible study in my home. I felt like I was, gifted to teach the Bible and study the Bible and try to, you know, teach others. And so that was one thing that I did. And, were we growing a big, massive church? No, we had a consistent group of believers that were coming together studying the scripture. And I had to ask myself, how was I treating that fruit that God has placed in my hand? And if I dismissed that because it wasn't what a lot of people would consider a big, huge, successful thing, then I'm disrespecting what God's given to me. Starting a YouTube channel, like Shawn and I doing Solomon's Porch. I had a long period of time where, and Shawn could probably remember, where there was goals to increase the amount of listenerships and increase the amount of viewers and all this, that, and the other. And if it didn't increase, I'd get upset sometimes. Um, I'm thinking, well, if something's healthy, it's growing. Is kind of the mindset that I had. If something's not growing, then it's dying. And then it took time for me to realize like there are consistent people who listen, who watch, who somewhat participate with the show, and we've got to treat every single individual as if they matter as much as a million people or whatever that number is. Um, and I think that's where we can get lost in the searching to fulfill that calling, is, are you using what's in your hands to do God's calling in your life? Because a person who can't help but to make people smile, they don't need to work in guest services at a church. They're going to do that no matter where they go.
Yeah.
And so, some people who love to teach, like they're always going to be finding opportunities to teach somebody. Always. They don't have to get a teaching job in whatever capacity that looks like. Someone who does music, they don't need to be on stage in front of millions of people. They don't need to have a Lecrae stage to to express a Lecrae gift, if that makes sense.
Facts.
And so if your gift is music, you're going to do it whether or not you have anybody listening to it, because that's what God's given you. And I think in that, kind of going back to the initial, the very initial, whatever the initial topic or whatever, is that, we need to treat everything in our lives as if that matters just as much as the spiritual gift that God's given us. So the gift of language, the gift of communication, the gift of our health, our bodies, like Shawn alluded to, money, like all of these things are things that we need to take care of because they are godly gifts to us. And we don't need to neglect those things that he's given us just because we're more seeking out the other types of gifts and the capacity to do better in those gifting areas. I don't know if that makes sense. Is that clear?
Like
I mean, I understand it. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know, Chris. I mean, have you ever had any type of struggle where you felt like, I'm not utilizing what God's given me as a gifting? I mean, I know you love music and stuff like that.
Well, it's so funny. It's so many, like Shawn, like I could do so much, you know what I'm saying? And I think you get frustrated. It was a time in my life where I was in like a heavy depression, and not because it wasn't like, not understanding it or like, what is God doing kind of mentality, but it was just like, I wasn't getting what I wanted. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't getting what I felt like I wanted at that time. And I was getting upset with my circumstance, upset with God. And I felt like, God brought me out of that. Of course, because at that time I was jobless and he got me a job and stuff. But at the same time, and to this day, I try to figure out I know my purpose in life, but sometimes it does look like things aren't that clear. You know what I mean? Like you saying, like you work a job that you may not like, but at the same time, it pays the bills, and you do it, but you still want to do other things. You may still, I may still want to be like, hey, I want to do, track stars full time, or I want to do creative air full time, which is me and my wife's business. So I don't know how to like articulate that, you know what I mean? But I do know that my job isn't something like, I'm not putting my eggs in that basket. I know it's not my purpose. I know when it's I get there at 9 before I clock in at 9:30, and I'm going at 6, because I know this is something that pays me versus something that's my purpose in life. And I have purpose, and I know I have purpose. You know what I'm saying? And honestly, to be honest with you, I feel like sometimes one of my purpose running away from is like preaching or like being a teacher of the word and stuff like that. And not running away from it like I don't want to do it, but just like, I'm like, God, I don't want to pastor these folks. This ain't what I want to do. Like, I don't want to be nobody's pastor. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't see myself like that. I just see myself like, just like, I know I'm called to be creative. I'm a creative at heart. You know what I'm saying? Like, I know I'm creative. Like, I am a visionary. I'm like I said, creative. And I like to be just free with that. I feel and maybe God will have to show me if I am supposed to pastor somebody or pastor people, whatever. Like, show me what that looks like. Like, show me what that looks like, because the traditional, just get up there, we play worship songs, I get up there and preach and all this other stuff. Then I'm like, I don't think that's what I'm called to do because I just don't feel creative enough. You know what I'm saying? But I just think, man, it's one of those things where it's like you have to like really be patient with the Lord, and you got to really like go deep with God if you really want to know if you're in that waiting room, and if you're in that area that you just feel stuck, like you really got to press into the Lord. And I don't know what that looks like for you. You know what I mean? And when I mean press in, meaning like, fasting or, turning off something that has your attention when God's supposed to have your attention. You know what I'm saying? Like, when you're supposed to be reading, but you're watching something online, and it's like, okay, God, really, let me focus in on you. Because sometimes those things, what I've heard from people, and I've seen from my life too, sometimes it's like when you shut stuff off, God is like clearly showing you stuff, clearly speaking to your heart, clearly when you're in his word, you're getting revelation, you're getting stuff that can speak to the situation that you're in right now. So it's just, I don't know, man. I don't know. This is very a difficult kind of like thing for certain people, because some people could be like, yeah, Jeremiah did all that, bro. I don't know what else to say. You get what I'm saying? And I'm like, I don't know what to say, but talk to the Lord. Like, that's it,
Yeah, I think, one thing as Christians, when we're looking at calling, I think we need to look at it's just like scripture, right? Just like a passage in the Bible, whether it's from book to chapter to verse, you got to start with general. So there's a general calling that all Christians have to love
Yeah.
God, to love your neighbor. We got to make sure we have that down. Like,
Yeah, that's true.
we can't neglect that in order to fulfill the calling on our individual life, the individual focused in on us and what we're called to do. Also, Jeremiah, you're married. Shawn and I, wife and kids, our calling is to love our wives and love our kids. Like that's our next big calling in life.
Yeah.
And so these are things, and then we're called to have, um, self-control. Express the spirit of the fruit, the things like that. There are certain things that, like the things that all Christians are called to do. I think those are the things that we need to make sure we are fulfilling those callings. And then when we get to the our callings, our specific callings, then fulfilling those other callings will be able to help us in that, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
your integrity, your telling the truth, treating people with love, all of these things, they will help you fulfill that more personalized calling whenever you get to that part of your life. And so those are the things I feel like, you start big, broad, love God, love your neighbor as yourself. Then you kind of narrow in, and I think that's probably one of the biggest things that can help us as we're kind of in that waiting room to that place where we feel like God is calling us toward, is to work on those things that everybody's generally called to do as Christians and believers. So that's kind of my last 2 cents on it.
And real quick, don't forget the Great Commission too, man. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
yeah,
And I know it's part of loving God and loving people, but just making disciples of people. Go and make disciples for Jesus Christ. You know what I mean? And that's one of those things where, I think we sometimes we think we're making disciples because somebody follow us or we got fans or whatever, you know what I mean? But we're not discipling, we're entertaining these people. Discipleship is when I'm walking with you hand in hand and like walking you through stuff, walking through your personal dark stuff, walking with you through your joys and your highs, you know what I'm saying? But just walking with you and discipling you, you know what I'm saying? And discipling you to look more like Christ instead of me. You know what I'm saying? Like that person should walk away looking like Jesus than DJ Jeremaya. You know what I mean? So I think that's
yeah,
another
man.
thing that at times we forget about the Great Commission.
Absolutely. Anything last to end it off, Shawn? No, you
No,
got it.
I'm good.
Awesome, man. Well, look, we appreciate y'all checking this out. DJ Jeremiah, thank you so much for being a part of this
Yeah, man.
segment and this episode of the podcast, sir. It was great having you on. And
Thank y'all.
hopefully we'll be able to do it again, sir. I think you're a great contributor to this to these discussions. And we also want to thank our sponsors, Patreon supporters, Sam Blackwell, Jason Motley. Thank you, sirs, for rocking with the show for a long time now. So we definitely appreciate that. And Shawn, I don't see anything to end the show out. So um,
Your choice.
maybe we'll end it out with Convictions, The Price of Grace, since that's the one I've been rocking out to. And yeah, man. So we will see y'all next time. Hope you have a great week and God bless.
Peace.